Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, again, those of you who just joined us for the final session today, which in many cases, as it's about the money, should be the most interesting one that's basically there. Investment in Science and Technology Businesses is the title of our panel here today, and Alistair Kane, CEO of ThinkersHQ, is chairman for this panel. And I like the way that everyone sat over there and the speakers are standing here. Is there something? I'm sure we could do a psychological profile of that kind of. But anyway, we'll move basically on from that end of the door. Alistair has over 25 years' experience delivering strategic business growth in both B2B and B2C environments in the UK, across Europe, and the US and Asia Pacific, whilst working with some of the world's most dynamic brands across their global markets. He's now CEO of ThinkersHQ, a boutique management and investment company that looks to identify strong entrepreneurs and brilliant business opportunities. So I'll turn over to you, Alistair, to introduce your panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. So we have a fantastic panel to discuss the investment and in science and technology businesses. So let me introduce them to you. Immediately on my left-hand side, we have Roy, so Roy, Technology Specialist with Venture Capital Unit at the Department for International Trade. Roy's been exploring the next best innovations and technologies for over 20 years, commercialising Internet of Things, FMCG devices, through to due diligence on energy storage systems. For the last 3 years, as part of DIT's Venture Capital Unit, Roy seeks out the UK's best technology companies and has facilitated introductions to over 150 strategic international investors. Welcome, Roy. Simon, next to him, Simon Bond, is an Innovation Director at SETsquared, and Simon is on home turf today. So SETsquared, as many of you know, is the University Business Incubator that partners with the Universities of Bath, Bristol, Exeter, Surrey and here at Southampton. SETsquared has been in operation since 2002 and has incubated over 1,000 early-stage start-up science and technology businesses. Welcome, Simon, thank you. James Otter at the end. James is currently CEO of Ellipson. James has started life off at Cambridge University, then went on to INSEAD, did his MBA. His corporate commercial experience includes a range of international management positions with Zeneca Agrochemicals, a leading major turnaround whilst on the board of Spectris, and for the last 15 years he's focused on the bioscience SME sector, both as an investor and as chairman of IGEA and as CEO of several SMEs focusing on imaging, drug delivery, telemedicine and cell culture. He's got a keen interest in converting innovation into stable, sustainable, prosperous companies. He's also a non-exec director of Apollo VCT, which is managed by Octopus Investments. James. And then completing the panel is Darren, who's Business Development Manager at Crowdcube, which, as many of you know, is the world's first leading investment crowdfunding platform, where Darren works with many entrepreneurs looking to use the Crowdcube platform to raise investment for their businesses. He works with them to get the most out of the process in an advisory capacity and to set them all up for successful campaigns. So welcome, Darren. Thank you very much. So moving on, for those of you who had the pleasure this morning of listening to the Right Honourable Sir Vince Cable, I was particularly interested in his observation around finance in business, where he very much suggested that this is very much work in progress, of course liking to take some of the claim for credit himself from his time in government. So on the sort of theme of this sort of landscape that is work in progress, perhaps we could start our discussion by asking each member of the panel to reflect on Sir Vince's view from their own practical experience. So Roy, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, certainly, thank you. So I work mainly with pre-IPO companies, Series A type stage companies, so I guess that's the perspective I can take this from. And I suppose it's interesting that we've heralded ourselves as the Silicon Valley of Europe, and that's still true. We still have the best technology around Europe, we secure the most investment. What we're starting to see now, though, are the acquisitions of the large players. I mean, we've seen Arm get acquired by SoftBank. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because actually that means, and this is what we're starting to see now, you've then got the people who've received that money starting up new ventures themselves, setting up their own funds, starting to incubate, and they're bringing knowledge together. So it's actually, there's a good side to it. So that we might take the money.
Yes, thanks. So the constituency that we work with at SETsquared is very early stage companies. So early stage, many of them are just in the earliest weeks of incorporation when they join the SETsquared incubator. So I think about 2015, which seems like a different age now, doesn't it? But in 2015 we had 263 member companies. Some of the best ones were, of course, here in Southampton, I'd say, independently. And those companies raised just short of £95 million of investment into their businesses across the year. Substantially, that was equity investment, although there was substantial, 27% of that was in grant funding as well. So it was a pretty healthy scene. And that was, I guess, based on that, the holy trinity of early stage funding in the tech scene that we see, so we're much earlier than you, which is the combination of the, I guess, the grant regime, so the Innovate UK and some of the regional stuff that's kicking around. Then there's the EIS and seed EIS, so the tax incentive schemes for seed investment, and then the R&D tax credit scheme. And those combine in our world to drive forward the funding into the early stage, which was a good year. 2015 was the best year ever for SETsquared. We'll see how 2016 shapes up.
I think that the general outlook from our point of view as, I suppose, the leading equity crowdfunding platform in the market is that, and from the visibility that gains us, is that I think we talk an awful lot about Silicon Valley and trying to model the ecosystem on Silicon Valley. But one of the things that I think I would definitely agree with Roy on is that while the UK is a leader in so many different verticals across Europe, and we have had more investment, which is a metric that everybody obsesses about, when you have people exiting these large businesses and actually funneling investment back into the ecosystem, you not only have a new avenue of funding for businesses from sophisticated angels and that sophisticated human capital that can hopefully strengthen each vertical that we use. We've seen an awful lot of that, and we've seen, I suppose, in the form of investors that have had large exits, seeding the rounds that you see listing on Crowdcube. A couple of examples would be a company called Infinity Health, which is a large enterprise tech solution for hospitals that we funded earlier this year, and lead investment from the founder of Zoopla and one of the founders of Lionsgate as well, who obviously have seen some liquidity in the last number of years. So we're seeing that, and I think that it obviously bodes well for the sector or for the industry in general, and I think that type of, I suppose, M&A activity will only strengthen us and strengthen the connection between verticals and Europe.
I think it's a complex issue. I think for people starting out, it is an extremely complex area, financing, and having run SMEs, my rule of thumb is that if you are financing your company, it's probably 50% of your effort and time, which I think is a uniquely British phenomenon because, to your point, some of the American styles of funding is that they put more money in earlier and are more ruthless. So if you don't hit the numbers and you're not going to make it, you get cold. Which is not a big deal in the States, but in this country we still have this obsession with success. So we tend to keep people on life support for too long. And I think we raised it earlier in the chat earlier, I think it's a very complex environment. I think it's worth, if you're starting out as a startup, it's worth talking to people who've done it before, because trying to navigate your way around government grants, tax funding, VC funding, whatever, is incredibly time consuming. You need to have somebody who have to pay them, and then they need to show you the way. I think that there are lots of tax incentives. I think that more small companies need to make more investors money, because as we mentioned earlier, you're competing with flats in Wandsworth, which actually are doing very well as an investment, so why should I invest in you? A lot of people say, well, the government should do more. They may do, but I don't think they're going to have the money. So you're just going to have to fight your way out, and it's not easy. The rules are changing. I mean, I was on a board meeting with VCT, Venture Capital Trust, yesterday. The government rules on VCTs with squeezed, so now they have to invest in companies that are less than 7 years old, so they're going to have to come earlier in the market. It's not easy, but it's worth the effort.
Thanks very much. And James, just picking up on the theme that you raised there about the sort of the complex landscape that confronts the tech investor. I mean, the entrepreneur, the entrepreneurs, as we know, are all very passionate about their business and their model and their technology or their invention, and very good at getting, finding ways to get things done. But I think we probably all experienced that actually raising money is not necessarily one of their top skill sets. And when they come to look to the market for money, it is a very broad platform. So again, from your experiences, what advice would you give to the entrepreneur starting out in terms of how do they navigate that landscape? So James, do you want to just carry on that for us?
I think several things. I think most people come with a too complex story. I think they think that, entrepreneurs by definition are passionate and dedicated to their work, and they normally go into far too much detail. And I was at Otter Investments yesterday. They screen 400 companies a year, and they probably invest in 10 or 15. So you've got to be very, very clear. And most investors make their decision within a couple of minutes. So it's a bit like falling in love, to be a bit flippant. So a lot of people don't get the story right. If you've ever worked with tabloid journalists, the first question they'll ask is, well, what's the story, mate? And if you can articulate that in a few sentences, and it's interesting enough, you've probably got engagement from the investors, and then they're going to look for the team, they're going to look for the story, scalability, and all the other stuff. I think the thing to be aware of is time wasters, and without giving names, a lot of VCs or so-called venture capitalists in this country ask for masses of detail, and then you go to the investment committee and they never are going to invest. You need to be quite ruthless and find the right sort of people that you can get on with, because this is a big decision that a lot of companies I've had to turn around have got stuck with as a group of shareholders who've all run out of money at the same time, and the companies stumbled as a result. That you need a balanced board, you need a good chairman. It is complex, but you need to drag on the experience. So it's not very concise, but
I would echo some of the points surely that James has made. I think that I've uniquely, I suppose, come at this from an Irish perspective, and that I've worked in the Irish kind of startup and tech ecosystem. So I've been able to have some sort of basis for comparison with another country. And I think that in the UK, the way that investment money funnels its way down into startups, there's a very, very rich tapestry in this country of different mechanisms and different, I suppose, vehicles whereby people can invest in early stage businesses, much more so than any other ecosystem that I've seen, even the US. And you have, I suppose, only to look at things like, look at the UK Business Angel Association's website to see that there are masses of different avenues like angel networks, angel investment syndicates, crowdfunding platforms, VCTs, EIS funds, named investment funds. And I think that to really navigate that as an early stage first-time entrepreneur is quite an intimidating prospect, because you don't know, I suppose, the economics of how investors are thinking, what do they expect from you, what type of businesses are they looking for, and I think trying to make sense of that is very difficult. So I think the really key takeaway I would give you is that boil it down to basics and try and understand 3 key points about each individual funder in the market or type of funder. Try and understand what do they like to see in an investment, what are the economics of their funds or their investment thesis, how much of an exit do they want to see, and how do you translate that back into your pitch and explain rationally that you'll be able to achieve that type of an exit for them in 3, 4, 5, 8 years time or whatever it might be. And really build a list of people and organisations that can either assist you in identifying them or that are them. Easier said than done, but I think if you can really try and build a very specific list early doors of people that are addressable investors for you rather than just a plain old list of investors, that will save you an immense amount of time. And that would be my kind of key advice.
Well, just to pick up, I really like the way that you use that rich tapestry to describe the UK scene. I think that might be at odds to Vince Cable's unfinished business. There's a glass half full, glass half empty message there. I can't believe it's taken this long to mention it. But SETsquared is the world's #1 university business incubator, as independently judged by independent people, having looked at 1,200 of these around the world. And aside from the shameless plug, it does mean over the last year or so, I've been speaking to lots of other incubators around the world, Darren and so forth. I just realised how small their economies are compared to what we've got in the United Kingdom. We've got a big, robust, sophisticated, deliciously complex economy that gives entrepreneurs a vast array of wonderful choices at funding levels as advisors, both by the private sector and by the state and so forth. And it is a very rich tapestry, and there's a subtlety about it. It is self-nourishing, and it builds on the successes that have gone past and changes and adapts to it. I mean, since ARM has happened, Micro Focus bought HP Enterprise, and this is a sign of ambition. So I think the rich tapestry is not something to be fearful of. It's we don't want to live in communism. We like a market. We like a market where there are choices. That rich tapestry is maybe a little bit confusing, but it's something to get engaged with.
I think resonating some of the things said earlier as well. It's a case of don't go it alone. There's people that have been there, got the T-shirts, and use them to not only sound out your ideas, but also use them as your own learning curve. And as much as some investors will look at deals purely because they want to see the competition for what they've already invested in, you can also meet investors, talk to people, and get a lay of the land so that you do that to self-educate yourself. And the other aspect is the old adage that it takes twice as long and costs twice as much. Fundraising does take time, and you do get early stage companies thinking, this is when I'm going to raise money, and they don't realise that raising money costs money. It distracts the CEO or more away from running the business, and they end up with a dilemma of trying to raise money at the same time as trying to raise business, and then potentially both can fail.
And do you think there's a sort of risk of the entrepreneur not looking to raise enough money initially, and then suddenly finding themselves in a situation where they're chasing the game again? Is that something that we've experienced?
I think that does happen certainly, and trying to match up not only how much money you need, but also the points of inflection where your valuation is going to change. And then you get companies where they've burned through a lot of their cash, they haven't accounted for how long they need to raise the next round, but they're about to reach a point at which the valuation change, in which case they need bridging loans and other things to get them over that hurdle. And the shareholders themselves will say, well, you're going on for a bit, because they've proven that. So they're really bootstrapped until they get across that point. Then they can go to the market and say, we've done something amazing, we want more money for longer. So yeah, they don't assess their runway versus